So it's 10 o'clock on the dot, or 9 o'clock if you're in the central time zone. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Lacey Clem, and I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, especially since it's the day before a holiday. We are pleased to have Erika Wagner, the Programming and Outreach Librarian, and Cindy Baumeister, a branch supervisor from the Crown Point Community Library System, with us today to give us a session about what's cooking in the library. I'd like to start off the webinar with a few announcements. To register for other webinars and trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at library.in.gov under Services for Libraries. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. If there is a global sound issue during the webinar, we will announce it in the chat box. If you are unable to resolve the sound issue you're experiencing, we are recording the session and you can watch it offline after the meeting has ended. Also, make sure to set your chat to everyone in the chat drop-down menu so we can see your comments and questions. There will be time after each section for them to answer questions. Today's webinar will be archived and available on the Indiana State Library's archived trainings page after it has been transcribed. This session is worth 1 LEU, and I will be sending out certificates and a link to this presentation later next week. So without further ado, I now will turn the presentation over to Erika and Cindy.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Did that flip? You can see the library picture now? I won't ask after every slide, just making sure. All right, so this is the Crown Point Community Library where Cindy and I work. I work at the main library here, and Cindy is at our branch. A little bit about Crown Point Community Library. This building that you see opened in 2012. This is the third library location since our original Carnegie Library opened in 1908. We have a population area that includes, a service area, I'm sorry, that includes our school system boundaries, basically Crown Point and Winfield. And it's about 51,000 people, just over 51,000 people in our service area. This is me. My name is Erika Wagner. I'm the Programming and Outreach Librarian here at Crown Point Community Library. I started working at the library in 2018 as a youth services assistant. I started working on my master's in 2020, and when I finished that, I started my new position as the Programming and Outreach Librarian. I actually started doing programming and outreach in April of 2020, which was not an ideal time to do programming or outreach, but it was definitely a learning experience, and I have enjoyed so many things about this role.
Right, and this is me. I'm Cindy Baumeister. I started working for the Crown Point Library in 2015 and was working in the children's department as a youth services assistant. I did that for about almost 8 years, and I'm currently the branch supervisor at our Winfield branch, which is a small satellite branch. I'm located in Winfield, which is part of Crown Point, but we kind of are out kind of close to like Lakes of Four Seasons or that part of the Crown Point district. So I include in this picture, I have a picture of my son. He is currently a culinary student at Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. And I like to put that in there just because I just feel like food programming, when you don't know how it's going to affect someone, and growing up making food alongside me in the kitchen has definitely sparked an interest in culinary things. He is hopefully at home right now, kind of preparing our Thanksgiving dinner. So I like to say, teach kids to cook or teach people to cook, and hopefully then they'll feed you when they're older, once they learn how. All right, so what is the purpose of culinary literacy? And I feel like culinary literacy has kind of become a big buzzword. It's basically teaching people how to cook, or the purpose of cooking, the whys, if you will. So, so culinary literacy is important because one, it educates. We like to talk about, like a lot of my cooking programming was working with preschoolers. And with education and teaching kids how to cook, you'll be amazed at how much math goes into that. When they have to, you can talk about, you can even introduce fractions to children even before they even know what a fraction is, but you're doing it in a way so that way when they get to it in math class, it's already something that they've heard, they're familiar with. It teaches people how to read, how to organize thoughts, how to read a recipe. You have to be able to do things in a certain order. If you get things out of order, it doesn't work. So it's definitely an educational experience.
Food also brings people together. Like I had said, do adult programming. And what I've seen with many of our adult attendees, it's less about what we're making and how we're making it, and more about the social aspect of the day. I've seen a lot of people who make friends at these programs. They start talking to people that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. There's just that sense of community when you're cooking. So I really do feel that it brings our patrons together in these programs.
Food is inclusive. Everybody eats, right? Everybody needs food. We can't live without food. So we found that you can do cooking programming that involves other cultures, you can kind of, it's a melting pot of all your different cultures and people. At the Winfield branch, we have a large Muslim population. And so it's really interesting to have these families come and cook together. So you'll have people that have totally different backgrounds, but they're there for the same reason, and they're there to cook so they can talk about with other people maybe some of their recipes or their family, what their family does as far as food and their food culture, and they are all brought together. Also, just even the inclusion of like male and female. When you think about, when my kids were little, I remember I have all boys, and when my first son was little, my husband was a little bit apprehensive about getting like the little kitchen for, I mean, but it's like, but food is inclusive. Everybody cooks. And the fact that now, I have a son who's cooking is not just for women. It's not just for, certain demographics. It is for everybody.
And it's also fun to see, at least on the adult side of things, I've had a couple times where couples come in, and it's almost like a date night kind of thing, and they're learning how to make something together. It's fun to see.
All right, and obviously food makes people happy. Whenever you serve somebody and they take that taste of that bite, and they just smile, or it's like you hear those positive reinforcements of, oh, that's so good. It just makes you happy. It makes you proud of what you've done. You've accomplished something. So we want to make people happy, and part of eating is being happy.
Especially when it's something they didn't think they were going to like.
Right.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, that makes the parents happy too when their kids try something new.
All right.
So this is a quote from the Charlie Cart Project, and we will be talking about the Charlie Cart a little bit later. We'll kind of go into more detail. It is sitting behind us. You might not really be able to see it right now, but we will spotlight the Charlie Cart. But this quote says, "Food education is critical to improved health outcomes. Today, 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. will go hungry. 1 in 3 will develop type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. Food security and healthy eating require 2 things: access to fresh, healthy food and the basic skills to prepare that food. It's simple. Food education is essential for lifelong health."
All right, getting started.
All right, so our purpose here is kind of to give you some background on culinary literacy, but then also just to help you, if you're new to this, how to get started. What are you going to do? Where do you begin? All that stuff. So we did talk to Lacey as far as the chat. If you have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We will offer opportunities to answer some of those questions, and then we'll definitely have a question and answer at the end.
All right, so the first step is setting realistic goals, and your library, your patrons. So how you frame those goals is really going to depend on your community. So for me, I work with adults, so I have more flexibility maybe than somebody who does programming with children. We can do something where we need to use sharp knives and not worry as much. But you'll still need to purchase the materials and walk them through things. So simple is always a good goal. I also feel like a good goal is to make sure that you're managing the amount of things you're trying to do in a session. We did one program that focused on different dips. And once you start looking for recipes, it's easy to find, 5 or 6 dips that look like they would just be terrific to do with this program. But to pare it down to like 2 or 3 and make it a little more manageable so that everybody can have an active part in the preparation. Also, trying to find ingredients that maybe not everybody is totally familiar with. We did a healthier soda option class, and we used simple syrup, soda water, and fruit juices. And about 3/4 had never had or consumed a blood orange. And 11 out of 12 really, really liked the blood oranges. So a new ingredient for them. Also in a Mediterranean program, I don't think anyone had baba ganoush, and the majority did enjoy that as well. I do recommend setting goals as far as ability of your patrons. Like I said, your community best. My goal is that everybody can actively participate. So if I know that I'm going to have people there that have dexterity issues and we're going to be cutting produce, I might have some already cut. Or in the event, like with the blood oranges, I had some already juiced also if the squeezing the juicer was a little too tricky.
Right, so my goals for me, so I started off, like I said, working with children, and the majority of my programming was with preschoolers. I really like working with preschoolers because it's foundational for their lifelong culinary literacy, because they're starting when they're very young. But you're also in a way teaching the parents how to cook with their kids, giving them ideas. So although the parents worked alongside the children through every step of that, with elementary, the parents don't have to be in there, but the preschoolers, the parents have to be alongside them. I wanted the children to be able to do the bulk of the cooking. So I looked for recipes and looked for ways to adapt recipes so that those preschoolers could do every part of what we were doing. It didn't feel as if it would be as productive if the parents were doing it and the children were watching. So I really looked for things like that. I wanted to create a kid-friendly environment. I wanted it to be positive. Like Erika, healthy foods was a really big part. Kids love sugar, and that's just that's a given.
Too, yeah.
So I tried to stay away from dessert type things and stick with healthy food options instead. And we did do, like at Valentine's Day, we did a tart, so it was more of a dessert. But most of the things were all healthy foods and things that were new, things that were different, or things that the children or maybe even the adults hadn't tried before. I wanted it to be a multi-sensory experience. Lots and lots of fresh herbs where the kids could tear them off, and encouraging them to take a taste or smell it. Just really getting all their senses involved. Things that they could do with their hands. We did bread in a bag where the kids basically they had to knead dough. They got to get all into that one. One of my favorite programs that I did was we did Brussels sprout chips.
It was not everybody's favorite.
The rest of the afternoon, everybody who came into the children's department mentioned that they thought there might be a dirty diaper in the bathroom, but no, it was just the Brussels sprout chips. But the kids had to take the Brussels sprouts and they had to peel all the little leaves off of them, which takes a long time. But it's using their fine motor skills because they're peeling, they're all in. And then we mixed them with some oil, salt, and pepper, and we toasted them in the oven, and they're delicious if you haven't tried it. But what the takeaway for that was, I talked to the parents about if they're cooking with their kids, but there's some things when you're in your own kitchen that parents have to do that the kids aren't going to be able to be involved in. But they could give their children a bowl of Brussels sprouts, let them sit and peel them, and then they're basically making like a little appetizer, a little healthy snack. It's keeping them busy, but then they have the outcome is a healthy snack to eat alongside their dinner or to eat before the dinner is ready. So things like that, where you could give the parents ideas of how they could take whatever you're doing and add it into their own home. With the elementary kids, One of my goals was trying to, at the Winfield branch, our hours are a little bit shorter, so we don't have as many evening hours, so it's harder to get those elementary programming days in. So I would look for all the e-learning days or during the summer where I could get the kids in at like noon, and we would do something that could even translate into a lunch. We don't really want to feed them a full meal. We're just making something and then giving them a taste of what that is. But depending on what we were doing, if we're trying different techniques for pizzas or like different grilled cheese things, well, then they could actually eat that, and that could be part of their lunch for that day.
All right. Any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Thanks.
All right, so the next step, so once you've set your goals and you figured out what you want to do, and make sure that your goals, make sure that they work for you. Anything that we say here that doesn't translate to your library or to your, even to your personality, then, you know, like if you hate Brussels sprouts and that's not going to change, that might not be something for you to try to teach to do as your program. But once you've done that, the next step would be purchasing equipment. You're going to have to figure out what type of budget you have and what you need. And we can do this in several different ways. We're going to introduce the Charlie cart, which we are really just lucky to have. But you can also do this piece by piece. Take a recipe, look at it, see what you need, see what you can afford, what's in your budget, and start buying things that that you can use over and over. So you might want to start with, getting measuring cups and measuring spoons. And there's a lot of things that you can buy at the dollar store. We're going to talk about the Charlie cart. There's quite a few things on the Charlie cart that actually you buy at IKEA, which is, so things they don't have to be expensive.
Yeah, and we know that, while not every library is able to have a Charlie cart, there are definitely ways to kind of create your own setup. We were actually very lucky to receive a grant from the Crown Point Community Foundation, as well as money from our Friends of the Library organization for our Charlie cart that we're going to show you now.
So this is the Charlie cart. The Charlie Cart Project was founded in 2015 by the former director of the Edible Schoolyard Project and a team of educators and designers. They set out to create an affordable and comprehensive food education program, giving kids the power to make healthy choices for life. So the result is this all-in-one program, a kitchen on wheels, a full curriculum, classroom-tested recipes. They provide webinars, they provide support. They give you all the things that you need to be able to get started. So what's included? So in this cart, you have all of your equipment. There is a curriculum, and the curriculum is geared for grades kindergarten through 5th grade. They separate the recipes by grade level and then also by season, which I learned very quickly. You want to pay attention to those, because at one point I was like in February looking for rhubarb, which I went to 5 stores and it was not to be found, and had to change tactics. So they tried to they base the recipes around what is seasonally available. So you can use those. And then those recipes we've adapted to every age group. So although it is an elementary curriculum, I've used it for preschool, we've used it for adults.
And we don't exclusively use those recipes for our programming, but it is a really good starting point. And it always has a little bit of background information about the food that you're making.
All right, so then, like I said, we said there is support and there is a network so that you can watch their webinars, you can follow them on social media and see what other people are doing. But it includes a convection oven, an induction cooktop. There is a sink that has a spray nozzle pump, and there's a tank underneath the sink so you can have what they call gray water and clean water. So if you're not doing this in a place that has running water, like if you wanted to take it outside, or you're just wherever you are within your library, you don't have access to water, you can use that. There's cupboards with the utensils, pots and pans. There is a blender. There's a electric griddle. Pretty much it has pretty much everything.
And it's high quality. Like the blender is a Ninja, and the items are high quality and are lasting very well.
And there's been really very few items that we've purchased beyond what is on the Charlie cart. We've added some things, especially with preschoolers. They all have to have their own like measuring spoons because they lick everything. They like to taste, so it's nice to have them each have their own. There's a few things we bought, the little mini waffle irons, just so that we could expand our programming and get into some waffle making. But most everything is in that Charlie cart.
Definitely.
All right, so this is a couple other pictures of it.
Kind of see what's on there and all the storage. One side has drawers, the other side has these shelves. And then the piece that sticks out on the side is where the convection oven comes out.
At the end, we will, once we're done with our, we'll show you a little bit more and kind of spotlight some of the items.
All right, selecting recipes. Like we talked about before, we do try to incorporate lesser known or less popular foods. We kind of go a variety of places though when finding our recipes. I don't always go to the Charlie Cart book first. I do go there though and look through pretty often. I like to look at the cookbooks we have in the collection, or if I come up with a theme. For example, my last program was cooking with pumpkins for the fall. So I went through our cookbook collection and found fall recipes and went through there until I found some that I thought would work well in this setting. Also the internet, obviously, and then we print out and cite for the patrons where the recipes came from. For me doing adult programs, I also bring down a lot of the cookbooks that they can check out if they want.
So for the preschool and for elementary, I usually start with the Charlie Cart. One of the nice things about the Charlie Cart cookbook or recipe book is that all the recipes are geared to make enough food for 30 participants. So and they give you your shopping list and everything already they've already done all the math, which is kind of nice. And they also include a lot of like background information. With the elementary kids, there might be a sequencing activity. They provide things that you can do while the food's cooking, if it's going to be in the oven. So things like that it's just kind of a really good place to start. Now that I'm out at the Winfield branch, I've been doing more adult cooking programming. And for that, the one program that I do, and I do about every 6 to 8 weeks, it's called Cookbook Club. And what we do is I find a cookbook within our library system that I spotlight. And then I go through, read through the cookbook. I pull out 2 or 3 recipes that will work in the setting that we're going to be doing it in. Because obviously, you have to think about your time constraints and things like that. And then I spotlight when people come in. I share with them some of the background information, because a lot of cookbooks at the beginning, especially, they give you a lot of information about the person who put these recipes together, their background, or if it's a very specific, like we did, one was called Hello Dough, and it was all about edible cookie dough, and just about how she got started and how you make cookie dough edible. And we went into some of that background. So I share that with them, and then they make the recipes that we have there for them to make. And then afterwards, they can always check out the book and do a little bit more.
And working with adults, I also, I do ask them if there's something that they were hoping to learn. This last program I did, we were kind of chatting at the end while we ate our pumpkin recipes. And they said, hey, the Super Bowl's coming up. Do you think in January you could do something for like football snacks? So that's going to be our next program. So recipe research is underway.
And never, don't underestimate Pinterest, because Pinterest is also a good source of places to find recipes. And it doesn't have to be anything super fancy, but, find things that you would like to make, that you would like to eat, and start there, because it's easy to sell something that you are 100% in on. I do recommend trying your recipes ahead of time, just because you'll find out if there's anything that's not going to work, or something that, sometimes a recipe it looks really great, but it's not always there are some failures.
Any questions about recipes before we move on?
Questions at this time?
All right. Well, I was behind. Oh, I was behind a few slides. I'm
No,
sorry.
we were on this one.
So these are just some pictures of different programs that have been set up. These are at the branch location. What was this? Oh, the boards.
Yeah, so because I'm not here at the main branch where the Charlie cart is, the Charlie cart is on wheels. However, we do not currently have a way to get it from one branch to the other. It is heavy. And it is, although it's on wheels, it does roll, but it's not necessarily, it's not the most mobile as far as mobile carts. So what we've been doing is we either send things back and forth that I would need, that I would need from the Charlie cart, and then as money is available, we've been purchasing some things. The goal, I think, is to basically to recreate some of the things from the Charlie cart at our branch so that we don't have to take things back and forth. But obviously that's more of a process. So this is just a sample of like how we set things up. And this one was for the cookbook was all about charcuterie boards. And so I had everything out for everybody. And then what they did is that we created a board together. I did a demonstration with them on well, in the book, it talks about like ratios of how many, like your different types of cheeses. Like if you might have some soft cheese, you might have some hard cheese, what your ratios of like different crunchy things, crackers, things like that. So we talked about that. And then I showed them how I did a demonstration on how to make like salami flowers. We talked about cutting cheeses and different cheese knives. And how, because if you've ever seen a cheese knife kit, there's all these different cheese knives, but they all serve a different purpose. So we did some educational stuff about that. And then I let them create this board. So basically they worked together. Some people made like salami flowers, some people cut some cheese, whatever, they did all the different pieces, decided how to arrange it. And then we shared it. Then we sat down together and ate, and then any leftovers they had little containers so they could make their own little personal charcuterie box. They were very small to take home the leftovers. So this is just another sample. So I usually split my participants. I usually have 3 or 4 tables depending on what we're doing. And on each table, there'll be a tray that contains all the items that they're going to need to create that recipe. The one difference is doing this with preschoolers, they get things as needed, because again, they like to taste, they like to touch. We do wash hands before we go in, but they, aren't always the best about, not wiping their noses and stuff like that. So with preschoolers, it's easier to give them what they need at the time. Or like I said, if like on those like little, like the cutting boards that are there, if the kids have what they need. So like, if I have a measuring spoon that each child has, or they each have a bowl or whatever, so that's their own personal items, it would be on their own personal space.
And for adult programming, I set up very similarly, depending on the number of participants. Each table grouping is doing one recipe. And so like you can see in this picture, they get a large copy of the recipe and all of the ingredients and all of the utensils that they'll be needing.
We usually have an extra bowl or a bucket. We found that the white dish tubs from the Dollar Tree are a really good place for them to put garbage. Just as their trash bowl or their trash receptacle, especially with the adults, because the adults want to keep their station clean. So they want to have a place where they put things that are dirty. And you can even have 2 different ones, one for things that are going to be going into into the dishwasher, and then one's going to be going into compost or trash. One of the things with the Charlie cart is really teaching sustainability. If you have access to be able to compost, that would be a great thing to be able to teach children and adults about what things could be composted. We don't at our location. So, but if you have anybody that does, that's another great thing to teach.
Mm-hmm. All right, safety. Want me to talk about the?
Yeah, I'm gonna grab those.
All right. So one thing we do as far as food safety, anyone in our system who is actively doing food programming, we do the Serve Safe certification. If you've ever worked in food service, you're familiar with this. There is a large program that, for example, like managers of restaurants do. We don't do that one. The program we do is $15. It is a few hours online. It's in modules, so you can do it at your own pace. Once you do the online exam, you get a Serve Safe certificate, and that basically just teaches us food temperatures, food handling, safety, things that we want to make sure that we are passing along to our participants so that we know that we are doing things in the safest manner possible. We definitely do not want anybody getting sick from our programming, so we make sure that all the food is stored correctly, handled correctly, and this is just a nice layer of protection for you to have if you are going to be doing food programming.
Just a note, you might drive your family crazy once you go through this because you start realizing all the things at home.
You put the chicken on the second shelf. Yeah, no, don't do that.
So just that makes you aware of the things that you should be doing. A lot of it's common sense, but there are some other things that you probably don't know. All right, so one other thing with safety is obviously knives. We use the knives for adults. It does make me nervous, but we feel like they should be able to handle it. I know in the Charlie cart, one of the things is like there is actually one of their recipes is teaching kids knife skills. So teaching even adults knife skills isn't important. But with the younger kids, we use, so this is just, it's actually a pan scraper. But this is what the Charlie cart encourages you to use with young children, especially the preschool age. And they use this to chop. So they would use this as their chopper. And anything that we're giving them would be able to be chopped with this. If there's something that needs a sharp knife, I would cut that ahead of time. But the reason is because when the preschoolers, or young children, when they're chopping with this, they're not holding it the way you would hold a regular knife. And I watched a webinar through Charlie Card, and they really talked about the fact that you can buy those. They call them like lettuce knives. They're serrated sometimes, and those would be safe for children. But the problem is because it's shaped like a knife, they're going to hold it probably incorrectly, and they're going to use it incorrectly. And so then when you put an actual sharp knife in their hand, they haven't learned the proper way. When they're holding this, they're not holding it like a knife, so they're going to treat it differently.
Yeah, you're not teaching the incorrect form.
Right. And especially for the youngest, when you're talking about like 3-year-olds, I guess you can teach them knife skills, but it's just better to work with them, like with the scrapers.
All right. Any questions before we move on?
I had a hand raised, but if you do have a question, please just put it into the chat box so that way I can get it to Cindy and Erika, since we don't have the capability of everyone talking. But right now I don't have any questions.
All right, sounds good. All right, creating a pantry. So when we have non-perishables that we use for our program, we have a little pantry. This lives in our youth services department, where we keep spices that we buy and things of that nature. We can kind of share it, but they do have the space for it. And then Winfield is starting their own pantry as well. But this is just a nice way to not have to have 6 containers of salt or something like that. Because this is in our youth services department, you'll see all that baking soda. They also use it for their program, so that might have been a dough or something, and a lot of salt up there. I think they made Play-Doh or something of that nature. So the important thing with a pantry, if you're sharing across departments, is being a good neighbor. And if you use the majority of something or the last of something, making sure you replace that. But it is great to have just a store of things, and then when you notice that something is, you have a lot of it, it's also, you're able to kind of plan your next program around what you might have a lot of. I see there's oats up there, so that makes me think, ooh, maybe I could do a granola program or something along those lines.
Right, kind of watch your expiration dates, obviously, and if something's going to, getting close to, then maybe see if you can use it. We buy a lot of the stuff that we buy fresh. We go to the grocery store typically that day. Sometimes the day before, depending on what you're buying. Some things are a little bit tricky. If you're doing guacamole and you need ripe avocados, that's kind of an art, just being able to find that many, that are perfectly ripe, or buy them ahead of time and let them ripen. But you just need to know that in advance. We also, so as far as like our numbers, so you need to think about how many people you're going to have in your program so that you can plan accordingly. So for me with preschool, I did 15 or 16. Our table is usually set 4, so I would really try to plan for 16. Um, and that seemed because you have to add all their adults in with them, so it creates a lot of, I mean, a lot of people in the room. Plus, just for logistics, that was a good number for me. Even going in with the adults, I usually I will make my registration for 20. There's always people that don't show, but we do have registration, and we have a cap for that so that we know that we're buying the correct amount of food. You don't want to have an extra, like a lot of surplus, because then it just becomes waste. Um, so you want to really try to think about what you need and how many people you're shopping for.
For me, I tend to do my adult programs. I'll do 2 in one day. So I'll do one at about 2 in the afternoon and one at 6, so that I can get people who are maybe working or otherwise occupied during the day. I set my registration generally at 16, like Cindy said, sometimes up to 20, depending on what we're making. And I don't buy so much that that I know I'm going to have extra, because of the space in between and our proximity to the grocery store. If everybody shows up at the first one and I think I might need a little bit extra, I can go in between to pick up extra. But that generally has not been a problem. I pretty much tend to close registration the day before and then shop the morning of. I always send out reminders, so that helps as well, for getting people who registered to come in. Like Cindy said, there's always a few no-shows, but the reminders and closing the registration ahead of time does tend to minimize that.
So I also like to really think about what I'm buying and what I'm spending. So obviously, budget's important, and so we don't want to spend a lot of money. But I think it's important for people to know that too. With the adult programs, when I did that charcuterie board program, I bought everything that I needed at Aldi. And because I bought it at Aldi, it was a lot cheaper than what you would have thought. And when I shared with them, I actually told them I had my receipt, and I actually should have told my participants exactly what I spent. And they were able to create a really nice board. And I think it was, like between $35 and $40. It's like, so they wanted to know the prices. They wanted to know how much things cost, because a lot of times you see these beautiful boards and you think, oh, people have, spent a lot of money, but you don't have to. I did something with chicken taquitos, and we don't do a lot of meats just because that gets into a whole safety issue and it gets expensive. But I used canned chicken, and I did it on purpose because because in a taquito like that, you really don't notice the difference. And it is a it's shelf stable, so they could keep that in their pantry, so they could make it with their kids if they just wanted, something that's easy. But it's also not as expensive as going out and buying, chicken. Like I was able to find it at a good price, getting it at Aldi, or you can even, there's a whole, I think it's a whole Instagram, TikTok page all about using food from Dollar Tree, which is just, it's a whole nother concept of, we want to be aware of our demographics and make sure that we're not like telling people to make stuff that they can't afford. So that's part of it too. And how to shop sales.
Yeah, I will say that I don't plan my programs around sales because I'm planning ahead of the sale papers. But if I purchase ingredients that morning and something was on sale, I do tell the participants, which store and what the sale was. And they really love to start discussing everything that's on sale right now. So there have been some really fun conversations, and I have definitely run to the grocery store after work on some of those days when I find out what's on sale at a store I don't usually go to.
Yeah, so just be aware as you're purchasing things. You don't have to buy the most expensive. Our library does have a Costco membership, so big things like, we can buy like things that you're going to need.
Spices.
Right, you can buy there.
Okay, and the last slide here. We should enjoy food and have fun. It is one of the simplest and nicest pleasures in life, and that's a Julia Child quote. So I am going to turn off our slide sharing so that we can show you our Charlie cart.
So just a couple things that
How do
get,
I
like questions that
I'll let
people
you
have
turn
asked
off
when
the-
we've done. I think you were right. Is that
Cancel?
do you see our slides now?
No, the slides are gone and now we can. So
I think,
we do have a couple questions. I don't know if you would want
great.
to address those right now. So one of the questions was, how do you address a possible food allergy in your program planning? Like gluten-free needs, nut allergies, things like that.
In our registration, there is it can require a response to a question, and so we do ask if there are any food allergies or dietary needs. Cindy has dealt with this more than me, so I'm going to let her talk about how she's handled that.
So one of the things, so when we put out what we're going to be making, we typically don't tell exactly what our recipes are when we publish our programs. And we do that for a couple of different reasons. One of those reasons is because if you can't get what you thought you were, or like, you go to the store and the avocados just are not workable, you might switch from making guacamole to hummus really quickly. So that's just a way to kind of, make sure that you can get what you need. It also, another reason is, especially dealing with kids and with adults, if somebody sees that you're making something that they don't like, they're not going to come. Or, my kid won't eat that, so that would be a waste of time. But when you're there and you're making it, you may try it and you may find out that you like it. So with that said, so people wouldn't know, if we're making pancakes or something, waffles, which has a lot of gluten, they're not going to know what we're making. So we have a space in our registration that people can say anything that they're allergic to. And reading that and looking at those things, if I have a parent that says that their child has a gluten allergy and we're making pizza, I'm probably going to call the parent and just let them know what we're making, and maybe just say that this is not the best program. Find out the level of the allergy, and maybe this is just one that they want to skip. If it's something small, like it's just like, well, we're making hummus, but we're going to have pita chips, then the parents could bring in a chip that would be appropriate for their child to be able to eat if there's an allergy. We tend to stay away from nuts just because that's common. And I personally have a peanut allergy, so that's never going to be anything that's in my programs. Again, if they can't do dairy and we're making ice cream, then
yeah. And we did a pumpkin and apple dip that we were going to be eating with pretzels. I had somebody gluten-free, so we also had sliced apples that she was able to use to try the dip. Yeah. So sometimes it's available, there's an ability to accommodate, and sometimes it's just maybe not the best fit, and we would encourage them to try to come to the next one.
I usually would always call the person though and just find out what the level, of how allergic are they.
Yeah, like, can you not be at the same table with flour?
Right.
That might be more problem.
The other question is, how would you introduce knives to teens?
Knives just make me nervous anyway. But I would go back to the Charlie cart, the lesson that is all about knife safety, and I would start there, and I would treat them like they were young children, like they had never held a knife before, and kind of start at the very beginning of how to hold a knife. I probably would find a good YouTube video that I could show so they could see. I would do a demonstration. Honestly, I would probably just not do knives. Let their parents teach them that. I tend to stay away from things that are more unsafe.
The Charlie Cart, like Cindy has referenced, the Charlie Cart curriculum does have a lot of good resources. So if you are intent on doing a program with teens that does use the sharper knives, I would definitely go through the Charlie Cart curriculum, or like Cindy said, find some good videos online, because again, we don't want to be instilling bad habits either.
And then you should have a first aid kit handy, because especially with the adults, because if they're using knives. Have you had anybody that's nicked their finger?
Not horribly. We've had a small, more like a paper cut kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah. And we do have gloves on hand if you know, if you put a Band-Aid on, we learn in serve say if you put a Band-Aid on, you put a glove on.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, even like you have to deal with hot things with the little kids, you know, teaching them not to, you know, what you can touch, what you can't touch. So although it's not knives, we still need to practice safety in that way. So yeah, sorry, that wasn't a very good answer, but really we haven't done a whole lot with knives with the teens. I mean, we do more like ramen bowls and teen foods that teens like to eat that don't need knives.
And I think they do have like some type of plastic type knives that will cut pretty well without being too dangerous that I can think of, but
Right, and you could start with that with the older
the
kids,
teens,
right?
yeah,
To,
just
you
not
know,
with the
like how to hold them, what you know what to do. I always think of what's the worst cooks show, you know, how Amber always comes up and like marks their hands when they're holding a knife wrong.
Yeah, even with adults, I'm careful with how often we use the big knives. And when I do put those out, the Charlie cart also comes with, we call it the knife apron. It's serrated knives that are in a roll. I usually put a couple of those out, even if they're not necessarily the best knife for something, they are easier for some patrons that might have dexterity concerns.
And they're very sharp because actually they say that you should, a sharp knife is actually safer than a dull knife. Because you're using it better. You know, I mean, it's cutting better. All right. So, any other questions?
that's it for right now.
All right. So let's show you this cart.
Should I unplug this and pick it up?
So this is the Charlie cart in person.
1 second. I'm gonna see what I can
Make you all sick.
Yeah, sorry for the.
All right. So this is
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Now I'm just gonna set it here and adjust this. There we go.
So here, this is our cart. So you'll see there's drawers. The drawers do have locks. There is a lock to be able to lock the knives go in this top drawer, and this lock here will lock this drawer so that if this cart is just sitting in the children's program room, the kids can't get in and get to the knives. This is the cabinet that has our fresh water and our gray water with the sink. In every drawer, there's all kinds of gadgets and fun things. The bowls, again, Charlie cart is really into sustainability, so you don't want to use paper plates, things that are going to go into trash. Instead, you're going to use either plastic or use real bowls. These are actually from IKEA. That's what came with the Charlie cart. And then everything is dishwasher safe, so everything goes into the dishwasher when we're finished. One of the neat things with the Charlie cart is the induction cooktop. So if you've never used induction cooking, it's a way to heat up food super quickly. So you can make a soup or you can boil water within what's like 3 minutes or something.
We did pumpkin soup, and to come to boiling was maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
And then we mentioned the Ninja blender. There is the Cuisinart oven, toaster oven on the side, which has 3 racks, and we can actually fit. You can do 3 trays of muffin tins, 3 cookie sheets, which is really nice. There's the little placemats, which for the kids, so for the adults, so we kind of use these at each spot. So this is kind of like their place where they work. I mentioned the choppers, stainless steel bowls. It pretty much has everything. Anything that you could need.
Sorry for the seasickness there. There we go.
We always like a little adventure. So all of this stuff came with the Charlie cart.
Okay,
Yes,
correct.
I don't think the Charlie cart cost $15,000, which is a lot of money. But it's one of those things that if you can get a grant, like we got ours like through a grant, that's the way to go. But once you've purchased it, you really have everything. It's set up for 30, like to be able to cook with 30 people. Everything is in either 30s, like there's or 3s, because you would do 3 groups of 10 is the way the cookbook is set up.
And like we said, we realize that this is not within everybody's realm of possibility. So it absolutely is possible to do cooking programs in your library without a Charlie cart. I would think that the once you get your serve safe, which is $15 a person, that I think is an important thing you need to have. And beyond that, like Cindy had mentioned, going through your recipes and saying, okay, I need measuring spoons, measuring cups, cutting boards. You can get those things at the Dollar Tree and get a really inexpensive start. And just kind of going from there. I bring occasionally things from home. We made a pumpkin bisque, so I brought my immersion blender. But beyond that, everything was on the cart that I needed.
We just recently, out at our branch, got a donation from somebody that comes in to use our meeting rooms. And I was talking to our director, and we're going to put that into things that we can use to kind of supplement the Charlie cart out at our branch. One of the things that's high on my list that I brought in way too many times for my programs with adults, but it's I want a KitchenAid mixer. That's kind of high on my wish list. I know it's an expensive item, but looking at Black Friday sales or using if you get a memorial or a donation that can go to something like that, it's something that will last for longer than I'm at the library probably.
Any more questions?
I think that's I don't see any other questions, but this was I do have a question. Hold on. Does we struggle with low turnout to programs for adults? Do you have a minimum number of attendees to continue holding a program?
I don't. I have done a food program with 4 people. As long as I have people registered, I'm gonna do it. I just shop accordingly.
Honestly, our cooking programs fill up very quickly, especially the kids cooking programs. I mean, we could hold them like daily, and we would some of those close, the registration will be full within an hour of when we put it out. Adults is a little bit slower. But usually we get good turnouts.
Yeah, I get full registration. The 4-person instance was an example of several no-shows, which I understand happens. That happened to be one of the first really cold days that we had. So I do know that, well, as you know, in doing any programs, attendance can sometimes vary based on a multitude of factors. So while my adult cooking programs do tend to fill, I don't always have everybody show up, but I do usually have pretty darn close. But yeah, if you know that you have usually lower attendance, I would set a lower registration. And like I had mentioned before, closing your registration the day before so that you can shop and not be shopping for 16 people and then send out that reminder and have cancel and you have all these leftovers.
So I want to thank you guys so much for doing this for us, especially the day before Thanksgiving. For everyone that is an attendee, I will be sending out your LEU along with a link to the video and maybe the PowerPoint presentation so you can see that as well sometime next week since, this is the holiday. And if there's no other questions, I just really want to thank you guys for showing us everything with the Charlie cart. And I always am the firm believer that if you're going to feed somebody, they will come, usually. So make it educational. That's great.
When you get your recording, both Cindy's contact information and my contact information are at the beginning of the slides. So please do feel free to reach out if you think of questions later or are interested in what recipes have gone over well. Anything like that, we're happy to answer.
We'll share anything we have.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.